everybody. This is Robin Ayoub from the Localization Fireside Chat, and welcome to another conversation. This afternoon, we're recording, I think, 204. If count is correct, if I'm off by one or two, it's okay. People will forgive me for that. And my guest today for this conversation, who's joining me on this journey for about an hour of recording time, has built an entire software categories from scratch. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. He co-founded Gainsight, coined the term customer success, and turned what used to be support cost center into one of the most powerful revenue functions in B2B software. That company became a unicorn. Before that, he built the first cloud-based EPM software, and helped CFO escape Excel hell. I guess we all lived in an Excel hell at some point, and I'm glad you found a solution for that. And now in 2026, he's doing it again. He has identified that sales enablement is broken, and I 100% agree with you from a CRO perspective. I think you're onto something here. The same way customer success was broken in 2013, and he's building the operating system to fix it. His company is Go-to-Market Buddy, or GTM Buddy. His name is Sreedhar Peddineni, and he's joining me today on the Localization Fireside Chat. Welcome to the conversation, Sreedhar.
Thank you for the kind introduction, Robin. Glad to be here.
And I'm glad I'm glad to have you with me. I hope I captured everything based on the research that I've done on you. I think I'm there. I'm not sure. Maybe I missed one or two, and I'm happy for you to correct me if I've missed something.
Yep, been on this planet for 5+ decades now. So I think that's a fairly accurate summary.
I appreciate.
We have a lot of battle scars to tell, the stories to tell, but yeah.
I appreciate your time with me, Sreedhar. And as we start on this conversation, on this podcast, we start with the easy one. Everybody's got a story, Sreedhar, and everybody tells their story from their own perspective. And this podcast is about telling people stories. So what is your story? What got you here?
Okay. So my story, I was born in India, brought up, I went to school in India. My story begins with an introduction to a gentleman by the name of Jim Evelyn, based out of Missouri, an entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur. And one of my friends introduced me to Jim. And that's where my entrepreneurial journey, spanning 26 years now, started. This was the year 2000, my first trip to the US, meet with Jim. And at that point of time, Jim was considering me as a vendor. So who could potentially build some software for him? And we got talking, and he had some ideas on what he was working on. And I was able to go back and had access to the technical team, the engineering team. Was able to give it some shape, and which kind of converted into the very first version of host analytics that went into, we had a launch event and so on. So one thing led to another. Jim invited me to be his co-founder back in 2001. I was all of 29. Back in those days, for a person coming in from India, startups at that age was it was definitely not common. That's how my story started.
And as I continue reading about you, very rare profile you have, Sreedhar. Sorry, the profile of not a marketeer who stumbled into a product, but a system thinker who keeps seeing the same pattern in a different markets. And ability to create something around that, Sreedhar, is very, 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 I want to say, unique, because
thank you.
Most of these ideas generates from somebody in marketing who's looking into something, and then they come up with an idea and they go give it to an engineer to create it. Talk a little bit about that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I think the systems thinking. I'm an engineer by education, and maybe some part of the engineering education inculcates that systems thinking in you. The education, that's one part of it. But if I were to reflect back on my journey, I was always built for the enterprise, large B2B. It's B2B software built for larger companies, if you will. And if I think about Host Analytics, the very first company that the products that I was at the heart of building that product, we need to integrate with multiple systems, both upstream and downstream. And one integration does not meet the requirements of everybody. The general ledgers vary, the structures vary, and the chart of accounts vary, and so on. So you need to build, when you're building a product, that too in the cloud, in a multi-tenant environment, life has taught me very, very early on the meaning of configurability. What is an extensible software that can be sold to an enterprise that should become, a good citizen in the ecosystem, where you can connect to other systems get the data in, and also send data, share data with other systems, right? The same thing kind of continued, like you said. It's looking at the Gainsight, my second company. The problem that we're looking at is customer retention. Where did I see that from? Personal experiences of, as Host Analytics, my first company started growing. We always were spending a lot of time thinking about customer acquisition, the revenue growth. And there comes a point in every subscription-based business's journey where the amount of renewals that you have in a quarter is more than the net new that you're bringing in. That almost is always a point of no return. That's an inflection point. After that, every time your renewals are going to be larger compared to your net new.
Is that a good news or bad news?
It's a fantastic news if and only if you are able to keep them. That's mission critical. That's where the notion of net dollar retention, or net retention ratio, NRR, is something so critical to any recurring revenue business model. Without that, the business is dead.
Very interesting.
So, and the state of the union back then, this was 2008, and the way companies, subscription businesses were really looking at customer satisfaction is a CSAT surveys that we used to do. That includes my own company. We used to do CSAT surveys. We used to do net promoter score surveys. They were a race back then.
Wow, you bring some memories. Net promoter scores and CSAT surveys.
Yeah. And they continue to date, but that was predominantly it in terms of, are my customers going to renew with me or not? So the closest proxy was net promoter score. How likely are you to refer to your friend or a colleague? So we said, like, okay, there's got to be a better way in terms of instrumentation on seeing if the customer is getting value out of what I'm offering them. And the renewal is an outcome of value that I deliver. If I'm delivering value, the customer is going to renew. So that led to the foundation of Gainsight. This was in 2011 that we launched Gainsight under a different name. At the very first thing that we built in that is basically a system that we called it Customer 360 back in the day. And what is Customer 360? It's basically a collection of data from multiple systems. My customer data is spread across anywhere between 10 to 15 systems. That's a very, very common scenario, ranging from my CRM, billing systems, database, the click tracking systems. There are multiple places where my customer data is proliferating. Now, how do you get all of that data together? How do you synthesize that to produce an insight and generate a call to action where necessary? That's the fundamental premise of Gainsight. That's what we started with. And by the nature of the problem, you're forced to think in terms of systems. How do you integrate that information? And when you're talking about assembling systems together, you're talking about, okay, each system has its own language, its own identifiers. How do you get them together?
And most of them probably back then in 2008 were legacy system, integrating into legacy system. And I'm being generous by calling some of them systems, because probably most of them were like spreadsheets, text files sitting on hard drive somewhere, and you had to collect all this information. So basically, you were the start of that whole AI business, aren't you?
Yep. So the AI is where it is today, but I still remember in 2005 we talked about AI under the name of predictive analytics.
Predictive
humanity,
analytics. Wow.
Yep. So we all have this fascination about some form of intelligence.
Of course.
Yep. So we said, like, okay, we all want a crystal ball to see the future.
Sure. Why not?
So back in the day, we were talking about simulation engine, where you talk about, Excel what if analytics, where you would create a financial model in a spreadsheet. You would make a software run that simulation and say that, okay, here is what you have, a goal seek function, and this is your AI. From coming to Gainsight nowadays, the fascination here was that everybody wanted a crystal ball that says which customer is going to churn tomorrow or in the next renewal, right? So we did some work on that in terms of this data sparsity problem that we dealt with, and that's a longer story. But the AI started becoming a bit of a reality with my second company. We were able to really do, work with text, for example. You still have the surveys. You get customer feedback. Now, based on that customer feedback, we could do a sentiment analysis. And that was real. There were sentiment models. There were classification models. You would cluster the customers based on their propensity to churn. So these were like machine learning models that we were using in the decade of, Gainsight 2011 to 20 timeframes. Some things that started falling into place, right? That company grew from, a new category where we didn't know who to sell to. Any new category is born that way, right? I have this idea and I have built a company or built a product and launched the company. But by definition, if you're creating a new category, nobody is out there looking for that product. If people are already looking for that product, then you're not really creating a new category. You're serving existing demand. If you're creating a new category, you're creating new demand. You're creating demand.
Hmm.
You're creating awareness. A demand does not come automatically.
But Sridhar, you seem like to flip the pyramid upside down, because most people would look for a problem and then find a solution. But you sound like you have to. In your case, it sounds like you've done the solution and then look for a customer.
Yeah, I would still say that the problem is something that we saw. The solutions did not exist. The problem is something like the customer retention or reducing churn was an existing latent business need. That problem existed, but there was no solution in the market. Because there was no solution in the market, nobody had a budget line item saying that I'm going to buy customer success software, because they did not have a person with customer success manager title. There was no CSM in the company. Then who exactly is going to buy this thing?
Mm-hmm.
Right, so that's where, like, the problem was the early successes that we had in terms of client traction was a scenario where the company realized that there is a problem, and they started thinking about the problem, and then the dots started connecting with what we were offering. And we had good success, good early traction with those companies that are innovating in the space. That led us to our Series A with Battery Ventures back in 2013. And Nick Mehta, who is the CEO of the company, who was the CEO of the company back then, came on board as part of that round. And so one thing led to another in terms of lots of investments in marketing and awareness and all of that. And I'm basically a product guy. I'm a product founder. I think about products. Right? That's my secret weapon, or core strength, core competency as an individual. Now, coming to the full story, from the world of glorified goal seek in Excel, calling it predictive analytics, to machine learning models, purpose-built machine learning models for sentiment and classification, clustering, and things like that. We move into that 21 when I started building GTM Buddy, and where the text models have advanced sufficiently, and they're incumbent enablement platforms. These are large companies with due respect, but when they were founded, even there was nothing like a Google Drive that existed well. Okay, Google Drive itself was still evolving in that time frame, right? So they said, okay, I'm going to give you a way to organize your content, all the documents in nice little folders, and I'll give you an ability to tag them, and I'll give you a nice way to search for them. Your search is going to be better. So this was the context when these companies were founded, and they built a nice business serving a lot of large companies and so on. The state of the union in 21 was that with every software, there is some level of frustration with every software, regardless of what the software is. Now, the state of the union in 21 was that, okay, I have spent all this money on these systems, but you know what? When I'm searching, I'm getting too many irrelevant results. Search does not seem to work. Search is broken.
Mm-hmm.
Then started thinking about, with AI, the text, natural language related NLP and LU, whichever world that you see, even the advancements there, why is this a problem today? This was a problem back when those companies were founded. So there was an opportunity. And a little after that, the generative AI comes to be, which further expands the opportunities. Over the past 12 months, it's been like a race of keeping pace with what's happening with the possibilities with AI.
Yeah.
While as vendors, I think about not only building an AI product that I want to sell to others, but how do I take my team with me in terms of the people change management, people upskilling is an easier set, but really hard to solve problem.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And even for a company of our size, like we have tripled in our revenue, and we have not increased our headcount. And primary reason for that is AI.
AI is helping.
How we're becoming AI native. But even now, I see that my team is still not up to the mark necessarily across the functions on using AI, despite we becoming talking about and acting on that.
Why do you think is that, Sridhar?
Just the pace of change is mind-boggling.
Yeah.
Every single week, there's new stuff that's coming out.
Of course.
And the way I am trying to keep pace, and I'm not saying that I'm 100% successful, is that every weekend I have, before I call it a day to day, I have a project that I think about for myself to build over the weekend, a business problem that I have in mind for my company. And I have tools available, Cloud Code, Codex, Gemini. I use all of them, and I build something.
Yes.
And
that's your nature. You like to build things.
Yeah. And I've not coded in a long time. So it's not a thing where I have super unnatural advantage in terms of this stuff. Maybe I do have some advantage, I would admit. But I've not coded in decades.
Right. I do coding as well, Sridhar, and I use it for my own purpose nowadays. So.
Yeah, yeah. So these tools have made things so much more easier. Yes, I don't get scared by using a terminal, for example. So that's an advantage that I have in terms of using Cloud Code versus using a Cloud Cowork.
That's right. That's right. Now we talk on the channel about when a company matures and you need to exit, because every business builds a business, or every business person builds a business not to own it forever, but at some point it gets to a mature level and then you exit, which reminded me when I was doing my research on you and your organizations, Host Analytics, which is now called Plantful, and the exit to Vector Capital. What did that teach you about timing, category? Were you too early, right on time, or did you leave too soon? What do you think?
So actually, Jim and I founded the company in 2001. And we were with the company until 2010. After that, it's basically the investors and professional management that ran it. So in that construct, this is 2017 exit, the timing and all of that was the professional management that did that. But I do have a perspective in terms of coming in from those days, right? So we were operating in a domain that is very, very resistant to change. You're talking about the financial data of an enterprise.
That's what I was going to ask you. Finance leaders are notorious for risk averse people. How did you sell transformation to someone whose job is to minimize surprises?
Yeah, that was hard. And you're talking about, okay, these people are used to either, I love my spreadsheets. I've got those days like Excel 97, what I'm talking about. And
writing macros?
Excel, running macros and stuff. And I have got, those days itself, those spreadsheets used to run into several gigs of memory storage, if you will. Large Excel files that are all linked and macros running and all of that. People love them. And how do you get them from that, or a version of Hyperion or Cognos or a business objects implementation that's in my data center, my servers and all of that, to the cloud? We were one of the first players talking about cloud. We were talking about not even SaaS was not a thing necessarily. Talking about you should not be buying software, you should be renting software. Buying is expensive because cost of TCO includes you have to buy servers, you need to pay licenses, and then you have maintenance, then you have implementation. That was the language, right? So anyway, that was like whenever you're talking about this transformational shifts, the adoption is slow. The people who are early in that game don't necessarily end up as the large winners in the game. So Host and Six, to my memory, it was one of the earliest players. And right after that, there was another company called Adaptive Planning. Later, the company was renamed to Adaptive Insights, which was later acquired by Workday. Probably these two were the earliest companies, notable companies of that era that came to be. And I do know that Adaptive Insights has gotten a significantly higher financial outcome than Host Analytics or Planful. Good for them, good for their team, and good for the founders. And Host Analytics is not doing too bad for itself. It's a leader in 2 of the Gartner Magic Quadrants. It's in the top 3 or 4 in its category. 26 years after the company was founded. So something to feel good about what we have done there. I did not directly answer your question about the exit. I went through that journey. Right? In 2010, I exited. And there are decisions that people have made and so on. I would not be privy to that information.
Now, we hear a lot of talks about in any business nowadays about customer success manager, which is a term that you and your co-founder coined back in 2010 when you co-founded Gainsights. And now we call it CSM, I guess. And most companies want to put CSM in place, specifically those industries where they're struggling on the profitability side and they have like that dynamic shift in their thinking. Do I spend money on CSM? Or do I spend money on actually going direct and go get some more customers? And we know CSM are the growth engine from your existing customers in a lot of cases. And your net new is coming from the direct selling, if you will. But a lot of people are struggling with that. Now, when you set out to create Gainsights, what did you experience from a CSM perspective? What was your indication that this is going to be successful?
So it was a broader need in terms of, a customer was, I sell to a customer in B2B context. And if it's an enterprise software, people would say, okay, sales would hand it over to the professional services function. And the PS function, they would charge for the implementations and stuff, and they would implement and they would walk away. Then the customer is moved to the support phase. So I have any issue or something, you go to a support portal and post a ticket. That was the state of the union. Whereas the selling to the customers or getting them as a customer, you only have gotten them as a customer for 1 year in most cases. And if it's month to month, that's a separate ball game. But even if you are selling multi-year contracts, which are not very, very common, but 2-year contracts or 3-year contracts. But there comes a time when the customer has to renew. Now, in order for renewal, who is looking at the customers proactively? A support team is looking at the customers reactively, where after the fact they have had a problem and they're pissed about the problem and they're raising a support
Generally,
ticket,
yes, you're right.
and then you're reacting to that.
Yep.
That's the definition of customer support, right? The customer success is being proactive about it in terms of looking at the customer, working with them as a partner to deliver value. There was a need for that, and there continues to be a need for that. Now, ironically, the growth at any cost is behind us. Right now, we do see challenges where questions people are asking about customer success and account management. Should they be same or should they be different? Because I can't be paying two heads. One is a goodwill ambassador to build a relationship with customer, and another a guy who is trying to sell, if you will. So there are broader questions, but the need for being proactive about delivering value, that need does not go away ever, even if it's in a consumption model with Anthropic.
Yeah, it does. It's not going to go away anytime soon. I know that. Now, there's a lot of debate out there, and I would really like to know what have you experienced, and if there's anything you can share in terms of results, that'll be good for the audience as well. When we're talking about CSM and we're talking about the impact of CSM, have you seen any up in the upside in the revenue or profitability when you introduce the CSM function? Most of these things right now are being renamed, to be honest with you. The CSM now, I've seen many companies rename them to support or an upsell organization, still CSM. And I think this directly fits in what I've seen from your journey, right? So you created that customer 360 view, and you've created some analytics around how the customer is feeling, how the customer is behaving. All this information, if it's not actioned, it doesn't lead to any results. Yeah, information is good, and good to know, to have dashboards, and good to have like these graphs and pie charts. But if it doesn't really if it doesn't lead to action, you're going to lose the customer. You're going to lower your revenue. So any comments on this?
Yeah, the retention with customer success function, the retention has clearly moved up. Today, if you look at any subscription business, you look at 105% of every $100 of existing revenue that you have. At the end of the year, that 100 should grow to 105. That's the simple economics of an order of 105%, as you know, right? That's the minimum, the floor that the industry expects. And the higher you go beyond that, the better it is. The companies that are doing at 130, 140, 150% in terms of net retentions, and that's good for them. And that directly helps them in terms of to survive the current, economic environment, where people are talking about SaaS, where SaaS companies are going to die because of AI and all of that. Companies that are doing well on the
I hear that a lot. SaaS is not going to exist anymore because of AI.
Yeah. So for that as well, the companies that are doing well on the net retention are here to stay.
Yeah, that's right.
And the job function is undergoing a change in terms of the change is one thing that's constant today's world, where CSMs are being asked to also look at expansions. So is there a merger of, earlier there was an argument about CSM and account management should be two separate functions. Now there is a discussion about, okay, do we afford to pay two heads? Should I combine those two into the same person is driving success as well as driving expansions? Now, the same thing that I see in the current enablement industry, where enablement is something that no leader, no CEO would ever say that I would hire people and they would automatically become successful and productive in their role.
What is this, unicorn and rainbows? Where are we now?
Yeah. People do agree that, I need to have a structured onboarding program.
Mm-hmm.
And as things are changing, new competitors are emerging, new market is changing, new products are releasing, mentoring new verticals, there is a need to equip my team with that knowledge on an ongoing basis.
Mm-hmm.
It's not even one-time training thing.
Mm-hmm.
On an ongoing basis, I need to update my messaging and deliver that messaging and all of that, right? That's where the inherent need for enablement as content librarians, where all of my content is organized and it's clean, and people who are creating the learning courses, that's where enablement function came to be. a lot of over the 21 was a boom year for a lot of things. Like money was easy for startups, lots of capital raised, a lot of companies getting paper valuations of, a billion became a very common thing. So we're even wondering, like, okay, was Gainsight sold for very, very small amount? Because in 21, it was like multiple billions
And one of
of,
your companies made it to a billion. I've read somewhere one of your early companies made it to a unicorn.
You're talking about my companies?
Yeah.
Gainsight was sold at $1.1 billion. So it is a unicorn. And the company that's whisked about it, and the hope is that they would sell it for multiple billions of dollars. So that's their
And
business
for the
now.
audience who are listening to this, I mean, look, I mean, every entrepreneur out there, every operator, everybody who is have a dream of taking their company somewhere. I mean, this is a big lesson to be learned here from Sreedhar, is that when you get to that unicorn level in your company, I mean, I have not really seen. I work in the language industry, and I've yet to see a company that hit a unicorn in terms of growth. Of course, when you buy, there are some companies in our industry where they buy companies constantly, and all they're doing really is buying revenue. Even with that, that's not a strategy for a unicorn. It's just gathering revenue to hit a certain benchmark of revenue. That's it. That's all. That's all the story. That's all she wrote there. But for Sreedhar to take a company from an idea to a unicorn, and specifically in the tech sector, and building a solution, as he mentioned to us earlier in Gainsight, that's wonderful, man. That's very unique. It doesn't happen every day. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And building companies, as you know, Robin, it takes a village.
Of course.
Many people.
It's a team sport, isn't it, Sreedhar?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. I'm happy to have played my part in it in terms of founding the company, but it's an outcome of hundreds
Not
of
just
people.
one, three times. I mean, you've seen this movie 3 times.
Seeing it for the third time. The movie has not come to an end yet. So I was just talking about, and seeing the rebirth of a function, Robin. That's something that I really wanted to mention here. Because earlier, my father's days, people used to get into a profession and they would retire in that profession, right? And rarely the job descriptions change. There's one way you grow in terms of, grow the corporate ladder step by step. So from there, you're looking at, within years, there new functions are getting created, new job roles are getting created. They're getting changed and so on. I've seen that with birth of a new job role called CSM, a birth of a new C-suite role, chief customer officer as a CXO level, right? And now talking about the movement again into, okay, is CSM and AM account management, or these two separate things, or they should be slapped together? It's a full cycle kind of a moment. Now we're seeing that same thing in revenue enablement. There were sales enablers. These are people who are organizing content, and I would create the learning courses. I'm an L&D expert. I studied the learning theory. I would create this courseware, all of that. And they became sales enablers, sales trainers, and content organizers and stuff. Only to see that after the 2021 bubble, companies are running out of capital, and they said, like, growth at any cost has to stop, and first functions to cut, everything that they see as good to have. And all of these enablement professionals, number of them, very respected enablement professionals, started losing their jobs because companies are not relating. Learning and training and content organization is a good to have function, and we can live without it, right? It's impacting companies' ability to grow into the future. It's being very short-sighted at one level. And also that also requires a mindset change in terms of the enablement profession, where I don't look at enablement as more as learning and development or training people, but look at how are these people influencing revenue. That's why we are focusing more on revenue activation, where how do you get these enablement initiatives to be more data driven and deliver to the reps, the revenue teams, in their flow of work, and move the needle on the revenue. If you are making that happen, enablement will not be a good to have thing. Function. It becomes mission critical. It becomes a force multiplier for the revenue organization. And that's why we're talking about a job description shift from that of an enabler to a revenue activator.
100%. 100%. And Sreedhar, I've seen it over and over again, and you've seen it many times in your career, where you look at companies that they're, I don't know if they're not on the inside, but from the outside, they look very well. They're doing well from the outside. And then you hear something in the news and saying, we're laying off a whole bunch of salespeople. And I'm thinking, like, really? Like, it's go to market. Is the engine that you really want to cut? I'm thinking like you want to invest more in it. If you are having some issues, the financial or profitability, or whatever, you probably need to get more in front of your customers, not reduce the footprint in front of your customers. But we've seen this movie many times where companies, they go up first and they just, you have what, 200 salespeople? We're going to reduce it down, or I mean, I'm lumping everybody in the same
Mhm.
category:
Sure.
sales enablement, customer success, etc. And you reduce that by 50. Well, that's for 25% of your footprint in front of your customer has been reduced now, theoretically. So I'm assuming this is the wrong move, because I've seen it also in when downtime in an economy, people spend more time on marketing. Why? Is because they want to get the word out. They want to get more visibility in front of the customer. They want to sell more,
Hmm.
not the opposite.
Yep.
Any thoughts on
Totally.
this?
Totally. It's sometimes in business we do react to the investor and board pressures quite often, and sometimes we are forced to take more of a short-term view of things versus a long-term view of things. In the short term, especially when the going gets tough, your first instinctual reaction is like, okay, let me cut costs. And we look at, okay, where is it easier, where I'm spending more, and it's disconnect, not too well connected to
I'm
the
starting to
revenue.
believe like the board of directors are triggered, because I've seen it now, like in the AI age. You mean, you see that now? I mean, people are laying off a whole bunch of people.
Mhm.
IBM, Microsoft, you name the company, Amazon, and then they turn
Yeah,
around and they say, "Oh, we made the wrong move. Let's go hire them back."
yeah. So I think that move is slightly on a different tangent in my view, Robin. I'm not saying I'm right here, but it's a perspective that I'm bringing to the table. I think there are job losses that have already started as a result of AI. That's an objective fact. I see that across the board. I see that there are job functions that we are able to get a good quality outcome,
Hmm.
especially in terms of coding, for example.
Yeah.
Software engineer's job, ironically, is the first one that's an average software engineer's job is the most at risk today.
You mean the people that programmed AI, now they're facing job cuts?
Yep, yep.
That's ironic.
That's ironic. Yes, yes, yes. That's one. And the quality of the content, like the earlier, there was a lot of talk about AI's hallucinations and stuff. I'm not saying that hallucinations have disappeared, but the level of hallucinations compared to the 2023 or 24, they have come down dramatically.
Well, we changed the name apparently. Now I heard. Now we don't call it content hallucination. Context. We don't call it hallucination anymore. We call it context rot. So I mean, we're more
Yeah.
scientific about it, I guess now.
The context rot and this AI slop, the multiple things that are floating around. But I do believe that there is some realness to the job cuts. You're getting into the broader angle here, not beyond the GTM. And I don't see that the job losses in the GTM functions, especially the sales functions, is not significantly because of AI, but in other functions, especially in tech, marketing in particular, or the first hit.
That's right. That's right. Now, for the listeners, if you were to describe the GTM buddy in a way that they understand it, and it resonate with people, how do you explain it?
If you're a tech company or a company selling complex products in the market, requires sales effort. How do you ensure that your sellers are doing the best they can to win more, win faster, and as quickly as they can? That's the problem. That's been there forever.
And for the audience, when Sreedhar talks about win fast, there's something in the funnel management, in the sales funnel management, we call it velocity of deals. And if you increase the velocity of the deals, then you get your money faster as an owner of a company or as a shareholder of a company. That's what Sreedhar means by win fast, which is very, very, very integral idea or step in the selling process. Not necessarily generating the leads, that's important, but how fast are we closing these leads? Some of these, and for those of you who are follower to this channel and you hear me talk about it all the time, selling is a complex process. We're not just talking about, specifically when you're talking about executive selling, specifically when you're talking about niche products, specifically when you're talking about complex ways of approaching business changes at the customer's companies. These are not lightly taken. Decisions are not lightly taken. And your customer is taking a long time to think about it. It's a committee, it's multiple decision makers. There's a bunch of things happening on the inside of your company target that these are being delayed in terms of, or I'm going to close it next quarter. How many times I was a vice president of sales for many, many years, decades actually. And people would tell me, like my sales team would tell me, oh, I'm closing it next quarter. And I've seen this movie many times to remember, oh, I'm closing it next quarter. Oh, by the next quarter, it doesn't happen. And so on and so forth. So Sreedhar is onto something here. I love the idea of GTM buddy, and that's why I want to talk to you today. So.
Thank you. Thank you, Robin. This is the lifeblood of the company, right? At the end of the day, sales does well, the company is doing well, everybody benefits in the company. So the investments that we make in terms of hiring people and paying the people, we're not really strategic enough in terms of how do you get them to win more. We want them to win more, but they're not going to win more just because we want them to win more. Or sell bigger, which is larger deals, or sell faster, as you said, faster deal cycles. But what is that secret sauce in terms of getting the reps to win more consistently? And you talked about the buying teams. In today's complex sale, average buying team size, I've seen, even with GTM but his own context, I've seen buying teams of 19 people on a deal. 19. We're not selling like, our software is not like $5 million per subscription. No, we're not cheap software, but at the same time, like the buying teams are growing. That's the reality. How does one person as a seller engage with this buying team and have contextual and meaningful conversations with this buying team? This problem, we underappreciate the art and science of selling. And can we convert some of that artists into a more of science form of supporting them in their workflow, delivering the right information, being their wingman, their assistant, AI co-pilot, to get them to do the right thing at the right time? That's what GTM Buddy is.
So what are these? So it is a software, right? I'm assuming it is subscription based, and it is per seat. I'm assuming everybody get access to that.
Yep, it's per seat, and we also have the AI usage tier based, which are basically credits based. It's a combination of seat pricing as well as AI consumption pricing.
And how do you deal with things like RFP, for instance? Everybody responds to RFP nowadays. It's the staple in anybody's buying journey.
Yep. So an RFP is basically, it becomes so at the heart of GTM Buddy, we have a content system. We have a CMS. So that includes all of your previous RFPs. Your company's knowledge sits in your CMS. And we also have a learning management system. We have an AI role play system. And there are applications that are built on top of it. One of the applications that we have is an RFP. An RFP is that I have answered these hundreds of RFPs in the past, and here is my company information. Given the set RFP, which is a set of questions that I need to answer, which used to take a long time for a person to manually fill it out, leverage AI to fill out those answers. Okay. With 90% plus of accuracy level, while you shoot for 99%, but you allow for, you're eliminating 90% of the work that goes into an RFP response, and give the time back to the people on reviewing and fine-tuning the answers as opposed to writing from scratch. So that's an integral part of, we look at it as an application of AI.
Okay. And is there an approval process within that? Because as you mentioned earlier, it's a team sport, right? So multiple people are involved in everything you do nowadays internally. So if I want to price something, there are, various departments involved in pricing, insurance, risk management, all that stuff. So I'm assuming there's checkboxes there, right?
Yeah, there's an internal review process to that. Having said that, one thing that I would say, an RFP response is one of the solutions that we offer, and that's not our primary business.
It's not your primary business?
The RFP responses is not our primary business. So for us, it's one of the use cases of our AI capabilities.
And what is your primary business?
Primary capability is about helping the engage with the buyers more effectively. How do you onboard a rep? How do you launch or ever board a rep in terms of training? How do you leverage AI in that process? How do you identify if the reps are doing well in the market or not? How do you leverage AI to identify skill gaps, if any? What is my team good at and what is my team not good at?
Where do we need help with? Where do we need to upskill in some cases, right? Correct. Is that what I'm hearing you saying?
Correct.
Do you develop these pieces of content to fill these gaps, or do you, because you already have access to this CMS?
Correct. So we can identify, we leverage AI, we integrate with multiple systems, CRMs, call recording systems, content system, we have it on our own, and the learning system and the role play, all of the systems are coming together with MCP servers, the range, the possibilities are much more. And our AI platform called Nucleus basically looks at, okay, all these calls that you have recorded on Gong or Chorus or whichever tool of choice that you are, pull in those calls and you can look at slicing and dicing of those calls. But I want to evaluate this rep's performance on from this competency framework that we have. Okay, our LMS already has that rubric. Using that rubric, we evaluate the calls of people, identify what are the strengths and areas to develop. And areas of development is something that we notify the manager. And manager starts delivering more data-driven or evidence-backed coaching and not just talking about the deals. The complaint in GTM team is that managers are too deal focused, coin-operated managers, just talking about the deals, but not really looking at developing the teammate.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
So
You're right.
How do you develop that?
Yeah. So,
And
for
how do
instance,
you
if you
make
see somebody who's struggling with closing technique, you give that indicator back to his manager, say, this person needs training in closing techniques,
or objection handling,
objection handling.
or setting the next steps, or you're getting into the business too early, you're not doing enough of rapport building in the
100%.
opening.
I've seen this 100 times. I get people on the phone, and I had that like last week, and the people like they just immediately start selling. I mean, they don't know you. You haven't built a rapport yet. You don't know how they trust you.
Mm-hmm.
It's like throwing mud on the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah. So there are so many skills that we take for granted in a seller. And do I have a system of action which can methodically detect the strengths and areas for development and leverage that information to do surgical interventions on how to develop the overall competency of my team? And looking at it from a deal perspective with AI, I could look at the same information of calls and combine it with CRM data, combine it with the data from our digital sales rooms, which is a way to engage with that 20 people buying team. You could publish a microsite for your prospects on a deal.
Yes.
And everybody has access to one version of the truth in terms of the information that I'm sharing with my prospect. And I can look at all of this information to score a deal based on your methodology of choice. You could look at MedPick, and within MedPick, you're looking at what letters do you want to figure out answers to on a discovery call, and as the call progresses. And how do you leverage that to say, this is a good deal that you're working on? This one has so many gaps. How do you get to that? I'm talking about taking all of your sales process documents, methodology documents that exist in your CMS. There's training that's provided to the reps. How do you activate all of that stuff? Companies invest a lot of money on developing those. How do you activate that? That's where revenue activation comes in. That's what we do.
Now,
And
most of
RFP
these.
is, sorry, just finishing on that. In this broader context, RFP is a feature for us, and we don't want to be known as an RFP software company. Yeah, there are companies which are just focused on RFP, and they probably will have more bells and whistles than we have. Our use case is that, okay, you give me an RFP, and we can fill it out with 90% plus probability, and with internal commenting, internal reviews, and we stop there.
Now, what was I going to say? Most of these use cases that you're talking about, Sreedhar, is that the sales needs help, needs support. They need to figure out from their managers, not just necessarily at the end of each week or on Monday morning during the sales call. You know how sales calls go on Monday morning. What did you do? What did you do? What are you going to do? And what do you need support with? Very rarely is around coaching, development, and trying to make the rep is a more successful in their job that they're doing right now. And it's sort of like the sales manager job now becomes another salesperson, really, and they're not doing sales management. So you're saying, let's go back to sales management and let's enable that salesperson to do a better job in closing deals.
Yep, 100%. I think your experience as in the sales leadership is you would have seen this movie many times.
True.
Yeah. So managers are like notorious in terms of, everybody in sales organization is running after the revenue number at the end of the day. That drives their job, commissions, attainment, the whole thing.
Of course. Now, Sreedhar, as we come close to our end of conversation here, tell me, in speaking of sales, I guess, who's your ICP? Who's your ideal customer profile?
So we predominantly are selling to tech companies at this time, but essentially it's a high value sale and a complex sale. High value, complex sale environment. with multiple buying people in the buying team. That's an ideal fit. That company is an ideal fit for GTM Buddy.
In your experience, what has been the results so far, return on investment here? Have you measured it?
So return of investment, we have had customers who are reporting a payback period of less than 6 months. So which is basically like the question is like, if you're able to deliver with all the things that we are doing right now, if you're able to deliver an incremental 1% improvement in terms of all of your reps quota attainment, that by itself pays multiple times over the cost of software.
And I'm going to ask you, like, for the audience here, because they come from small, medium enterprise, most of the companies that they listen to this podcast, with the exception of a few who are coming from the larger organizations, specifically for the language service industry, that there are 19,000 companies. They're small companies. They're very, owner operator kind of model, but some of them have small to medium, limited budget, and a small sales team. Generally, they have small sales team. What is the one thing that they could do this week to perhaps, based on this conversation, to activate more revenue from talent that they already have, in your experience?
Okay, the first thing that I would say in this world of AI, where do you stand? A honest self-assessment is something that I would start with. No, it's not going to be hiring more people. That world is behind us. The question is like, we need to do more with less. We can be more productive and look at AI not as an enemy, but as a weapon that as a friend on your side. Where are you on that journey? It's not, and that's something, how do you lead from the front to the business owners, the founders, and the sales leaders? I would say it's not something that you would delegate. The transformation is so large that you have to roll up your sleeves and go back to school in many ways. I know that a lot of us, all of us, especially leadership in my age group, we have spent decades to get to where we are. Now it seems like, okay, we have seen a lot of different things, but what's happening right now on the ground is so very different from what we have seen in our lifetimes. It's time that we go back to school. Welcome that, embrace that.
And there's nothing wrong with continuing educating ourselves on any topic. We're a learning human being. Learning never stops.
Mm-hmm.
Last one for you, if you don't mind. And this is some sort of a reflection as you go through what you've been through so far and as you go look forward, I guess. If you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice before any of the 3 chapters that you lived through, what would that be?
Probably would have, I have had opportunities to move to the US a long time ago, but some personal circumstances, I did not move, and probably should have made that decision to move to the US a long time ago, because this is where my customers are. Yeah, so that would be an advice. I know it's too personal for my context, but that's one thing that I've done differently.
Absolutely.
Be close to your customers.
Be close to your customer, 100%. Sreedhar, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate the conversation.
Thank you so much for having me, Robin. Really appreciate it.
I hope you liked it. I hope this, was enjoyable for you. I enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Please consider this channel your own. Anytime you want to come back, you're welcome. Anytime you have an update and you don't need an invitation, just send me an email, say, I would like to come back and tell another story. Be happy to host you.
Thank you so much. Means a lot. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Sreedhar. For the audience, I want to thank you so much for joining us on this episode. Thanks for listening in. Thanks for watching us on YouTube. And if you come in on the listen to us on the podcast, thanks for listening in. Thanks for carrying us with you to the gym, on your walks, on the plane. I hear some people download it before they get on a plane. Thanks so much for keeping us in your thoughts. And as you listen to our podcast here, I really appreciate it. And I will see you at the next episode. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
There you go.